Imagine a world where, in a single human lifetime, 9 out of every 10 people vanish. Not from a single cataclysm, but from a creeping, invisible tide. Cities fall silent. Farmlands return to forest. Vast empires, in an instant of historical time, become hollow shells, their streets walked by ghosts. This isn't science fiction. This happened right here in the Americas, in the century after 1492. And it is the single greatest factor in the European conquest of 2 continents. I'm Ibnul Jaif Farabi, and this is Empire Builders. We often picture the conquest as a story of military technology, steel, guns, and horses against stone and wood. But that's the final, brutal act of a tragedy that had already reached its climax. The real conqueror was not Cortez or Pizarro. It was a swarm of microscopic invaders they carried unwittingly in their blood and breath. Smallpox, measles, influenza, typhus. When Columbus made landfall, the Americas were a vast human tapestry. Estimates range from 50 to 100 million people. The Mexican capital, Tenochtitlan, was larger than any city in Europe, with aqueducts, floating gardens, and bustling markets. The Andes were woven together by the Incas' incredible road system. These were complex, populous societies. Then the germs arrived. These were diseases that had evolved in the Old World's dense, livestock-keeping societies for millennia. Native American populations had no prior exposure, and thus no immunological defense. Their bodies were what epidemiologists call virgin soil. The results were apocalyptic. Smallpox was the most devastating. It swept through the Caribbean islands first, killing perhaps 90% of the Taino people before many Europeans even saw the mainland. By the time Hernán Cortés landed in Mexico in 1519, the plague was already ahead of him, racing down the trade routes. When he laid siege to Tenochtitlan in 1521, he wasn't fighting the mighty empire Moctezuma had ruled. He was fighting a city already crippled by a smallpox outbreak that had killed, among countless others, the Emperor Cuitlahuac and decimated the warrior class. The Spanish described walking through streets filled with the dead and dying, the stench unbearable. The empire's ability to resist had been biologically shattered. The pattern repeated with chilling efficiency in South America. Smallpox reached the Inca Empire around 1528, killing the Emperor Huayna Capac and his designated heir. This triggered a catastrophic civil war between 2 remaining sons, Atahualpa and Huáscar. So when Francisco Pizarro's tiny band of men arrived in 1532, they didn't encounter a unified empire. They walked into the aftermath of a devastating plague and a bitter succession crisis. Pizarro's capture of Atahualpa at Cajamarca was a bold stroke, but it was only possible because the Inca's social and political structure was already in ruins. The demographic collapse didn't stop. Wave after wave of disease, compounded by the violence and dislocation of conquest, continued for over a century. In some regions, populations fell by 95%. This created what historians call the ghost continent. Vast stretches of cultivated land lay empty. European settlers, arriving later, often saw wilderness they believed was pristine, but which was actually a recent cemetery. This emptiness fueled the myth of an untamed land ripe for the taking, erasing the memory of the vibrant civilizations that had shaped it for millennia. Reflecting on this from my home in New York City, a place built on land that witnessed its own profound loss, I'm struck by the profound irony. The greatest empire builder for Europe was not their superior will or culture, but a biological accident. It was the devastating collapse of existing American empires that cleared the ground, quite literally. It's a humbling reminder that the tides of history are often moved by forces utterly beyond human design. A virus, a bacterium, the silent, brutal arithmetic of immunity. The conquest was a military and political event, but it was built upon a foundation of demographic catastrophe. This has been Empire Builders, the rise and fall of civilizations, a production of Light Not Studios. For more, visit lightnotstudios.com. Thank you for listening.